Welcome to the STLK in the UTA Jazz podcast. I'm Conjo. This is Paul. We are here after the Jazz fall to the Sacramento Kings 114 to 130. Paul, I mean, opening night, it was ecstatic. Tons of people. I mean, we got free shirts.
First time in a long time.
First
the
time
Jazz
in a
give
long
out free
time.
shirts
I mean,
to
it felt like a playoff game.
It really did.
A free shirt, which everybody, I'm sure, absolutely loved. I mean, it matched the traditional court, the jerseys, everything. You know, it came out with fire. Lowry even gave a little pregame speech with the Jazz Bear on the motorcycle behind there. I mean, it was electric. But like I said, the Jazz fall to the Kings 114 to 130.
It was a game that didn't feel close ever. From the jump, it felt like something was off.
Something was off. And not only that, the Kings came out hot. I mean, they came out absolutely hot. And it was shocking that we were only within 5 points. I felt like they were actually beating us way more, and we were within 5 for around the first quarter. So that was comforting. Yeah. I said, we're within 5. You know, we can turn this thing around. And then it just kept progressively getting bigger and bigger. Oh. And it was tough to see. So I'm excited to break this down. You know, we're happy to be here, break down this loss. Obviously it is the first game of the season. Is this insanely alarming to me? Absolutely not. It's the first game of the season. A lot of the times, it's getting jitters out, it's a whole new team, preseason's hard to really judge that off of and, everything like that. So, I'm excited to kind of jump this down.
So one thing, like you said, it's a new team. I think that's really, really important to look at. And we saw it the opening night with the Nuggets versus the Lakers. The Nuggets came out and they look like they've been playing basketball together for a long time.
Yeah.
Because they have. The Lakers, on the other hand, have almost all new guys playing all new roles. So it's the same thing that the Jazz were doing last night against the Kings, where the Kings come out, and I think their biggest offseason addition was Chris Duarte, who was coming off the bench.
Who last night looked like the best three-point shooter in the league.
Exactly. So all they had to do was implement him into their already incredible team. The Jazz, on the other hand, have no idea what their rotation is, and we'll jump into that in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the starting lineup we saw was, obviously Kessler center, Lowry at the 4, John Collins at the 3. And then, we kind of went into it not knowing exactly what we were going to see. I mean, we saw Jordan Clarkson obviously not coming off the bench, and then Talen Horton-Tucker at the starting point guard, which I was really excited to see, what he was going to do right off the bat. Hit a couple threes. Didn't look, like he was in a flow with the team right off the bat, which again, he hasn't had a starting role like this. It might take a second, but looked a lot out of control. You saw him try that little under the legs move, which would have been awesome.
It would have been sweet.
But I mean, it's just that simple thing of just like, let's, get a couple other skill sets down and other things in the game going before we start to try things like that.
Yeah, I think there wasn't one point guard outside of Keontae George, and again, we're going to dive into all of this, but
I can't wait for that.
THT didn't look comfortable. Chris Dunn didn't look super comfortable, although he didn't play a ton. Colin Sexton didn't look incredibly comfortable at the point either. This is a glaring problem for the Utah Jazz right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, it's, everything else looks pretty solid. It's just figuring out that point guard rotation, which we honestly expected. Mm-hmm. Key points from the game yesterday. I mean, if you guys were listening yesterday, I predicted that we had two bold predictions, right? I thought that De'Aaron Fox was going to absolutely have a day. And Paul thought the Jazz were going to win by double digits. So let's break down both of those real quick. Is, most importantly for me, De'Aaron Fox, I think he had 19 points.
Nothing crazy.
And he only made 6 field goals, went 1 for 7 from 3. Mm-hmm. I actually thought we did great. First play of the game, he does a little up and under, and I said, we're in it.
I was like, he's going for 50.
He's going crazy.
Yeah. And
I think we did a good job of containing him, but I also think that came with the zone, which does not favor a point guard. Mm-hmm. A zone, what that is going to do is open up the floor for open threes in the corner. I mean, we saw tons of threes shot in the corner. I mean, the Kings shot 51 threes last night. Mm-hmm. 51 threes. And that is more than double the amount of threes that the Jazz shot. And although they had a little bit of an average, I think we shot 31% from 3 and they shot around 37. Mm-hmm. That doesn't sound alarming, but when you're shooting that many threes, it's going to even out, right? That's more 3-pointers.
This is the really important part, Conjo, is the Kings, up until 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, when the game was already over, they were shooting over 45% from three up until that point. So like the 38 is a little deceiving.
Yeah.
Because they had their bench players come in like, oh, it's my turn. Like, let me shoot a couple.
Yeah.
But their starters and their first 7 guys, they were lights out last night. Harrison Barnes.
And that's exactly where I was about to go. Is I was wrong about who was going to go crazy. It was Harrison Barnes. And that is what's so crazy about the NBA is, I mean, Harrison Barnes is a guy that, I mean, he put up 27 points in the first half and then ended with 33 points. So, I mean, he only had 5 points in the whole entire second half, and the Kings ended up beating us, by more than the margin was in the first half. And so it's crazy how you can have such a dominant player in a first half, go so quiet in a second half. And it's so easy for other players to step up and start doing things that they did in the first half. It's just such a talented league. I cannot stress that enough.
So something back to the zone, because that's why Harrison Barnes killed us. If we were in man the entire first half, he doesn't go for 27.
Absolutely.
Like he's not that guy. But what's hard when you're in this 2-3 zone, and as a shooter, you love seeing a zone, because when you're in man, or the opposing team's in man, and their head is on your chest, you can't get an open shot. It's really, really easy to kind of get taken out of the game when you're a Harrison Barnes type player.
It forces ISO players to excel. It forces other players to go into their bag and do things like that, versus a zone that's honestly giving players like Chris Duarte the room to do what he did.
Exactly. And that's why we saw De'Aaron Fox, who's one of the best isolation players in the league, not go crazy last night. But Duarte, Barnes, the lefty from Europe, they all went crazy last night.
And that's what it comes down to, is it's just getting that groove. Is like, maybe the zone was to kind of shut down De'Aaron Fox. I like to think so. And I want other people to kind of look at this as, this isn't, we looked horrible, we did this. I mean, an interesting thing that Paul told me at the game yesterday was, I was like, oh, this is kind of a rough first half. And he goes, we still put up 60 points. I mean, 60 points is going to get you places, scoring that much in the first half, but it's just, leveling that out with your opponent. So
yeah. And when like I said, they shot, I think 48% in the first half from three. You're not going to be winning a lot of halves when you give up 50% of the 3 points attempted, but the offense looked fine. And that's something you're not seeing anywhere else. I think the offense did good yesterday. They looked fine.
Yeah, I want to believe the zone was to stop De'Aaron Fox, because as most of us thought, he was going to be, the key factor there. And in the paint, I mean, Sabonis got most of his points off of cleanup. Offensive rebounds. He wasn't a player. I mean, he had a few buckets where he just did a little spin move and did a classic Sabonis thing. But you didn't see much of that happening. So I think that was just a different. Kings, like you said yesterday, you compared them to the Miami Dolphins.
Exactly like the Miami Dolphins.
And I like that comparison one, because the Dolphins, I mean, their running backs aren't like absolute stars, but they are all really, really athletic. And the Kings have that. I mean, they have obviously De'Aaron Fox, and they can throw in basically, I mean, now Duarte, they can throw
Malik Monk.
Malik Monk.
He's really athletic.
Is insanely athletic. We saw he was insanely athletic. And I think that kind of guard group that they have is that same kind of, as the running back crew for the Miami Dolphins.
So back to the Sabonis piece. So he had 12 rebounds last night. 6 of them were offensive. The Utah Jazz.
Here's my point.
The Utah Jazz, this is going to blow you away, actually out-rebounded the Sacramento Kings with offensive rebounds. Wow. If you were at the game, it did not feel like that. The Jazz, it felt like they got half as many possessions as the Kings did. And I'm not sure where those came from either, because we didn't lose the turnover battle by a strong amount. We won the rebounding battle in total. I'm not sure where this game, if you look at the stats, I'm not sure where it went wrong.
Yeah. And then, I mean, you can always look at stats. I mean, a stat that I like to look at is plus minus. And obviously for the Jazz, I mean, there was a lot of people in the negatives, and it's kind of hard just because rotations are different. I mean, at the end of the game, we saw, basically every player that hadn't played a single minute before. But I want to kind of go into, obviously we can talk about a loss for a really long time. We can kind of break down why that happened. I think we've done a really good job of, kind of going into a couple things like in that zone. I mean, we saw a lineup that I didn't think I'd ever see in, we had THT, we had Ochai, we had Chris Dunn, we had Keontae George, 4 guards in the game, and then Walker Kessler.
Yes.
And so, if you will, I mean, when you're watching that lineup, to a lot of people, that's really alarming and confusing, and people are wondering why. And I want to break down for a second why do we think the Jazz tried and experimented with that kind of lineup?
So if you heard Will Hardy all last year and all preseason, the Jazz want to play positionless basketball. And this goes back to being a really athletic team. Although we didn't look super athletic last night, that comes back to the Jazz wanting to be a positionless team. Those guys aren't going to win you a lot of games if it's those 5 on the floor simply because of their size. They're all positionally large, but they're all like 6'4" for point guards. So it's like, yeah, they're bigger than most point guards, but you have 4 of them on the court at the same time, which forces you to go into a zone. If you have what you saw last night, Ochai guarding Sabonis, it's not going to go well. So that's why you go in a zone, put Kessler in the middle, let him roam the paint a little bit. It didn't end up going good though. And that's why you saw the zone struggles, because you have 4 guys out there who aren't bigger than the guy they're lining up with.
Absolutely. I mean, and then we throw in Lowry Markkanen, right? And he got hot at the end, but it kind of took him a second. And I honestly want to think, we took a lot of threes at the beginning of the game as well. And I like to think that Will Hardy told the team, chuck them, right? Get it out now. Like, get out those, those jitters, get out the missed shots. I mean, let's just get as many shots and reps as possible at the beginning of the game. And we saw that translate towards the end of the game, but also is always hard to, come back from a deficit. You're always fighting, and that translates, in a negative way sometimes.
So last night, just to go back to like the fighting back part, the Utah Jazz have had so many games. I'm sure you've been there when they're down 15 and they get a couple technicals, whether it's on them or the opponent, and then all of a sudden we're within 5 and everyone's on their feet and it feels like the roof is about to pop off.
Absolutely.
When they got those technicals last night, I thought that was the arc we were about to follow. I thought it was going to just change the course of the game, and it didn't. And then that's when we saw the uptick in threes. It's like, well, that didn't work. Now let's just shoot our way back into this.
We're down like 16 with like 7 or 8 minutes left. And I'm like still sitting there, obviously, because of that arch. I mean, a lot of people like to leave games early. And I always believe in, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen it millions of times before. Take me back to the olden days, Sunday out of Gaines versus LeBron James. I would have never.
No.
I literally remember everybody leaving and telling my dad that I wanted to stay.
So that was the first Jazz game I've ever been to. My brother said, we're leaving. I'm like, no, we're not.
I just want to watch Jazz basketball.
I just want to be here. I'm
soaking
crying.
it up.
I'm like 7 or 8. I start crying. I'm like, please let us stay. greatest decision I've ever made to start crying in that moment.
That's still like one of the best Jazz moments in my lifetime. And I'll never forget, that same kind of feeling. It's that arch, the comeback. There is nothing like a comeback. And so, even though it didn't turn out the way we wanted to, I felt it, and that gives me hope for moving forward. But, I want to jump into, some positives. It is a loss, but there are always positives in losses. And I want to start with one, and I already know what I'm going to start with, and that is Keyonte George.
Wow.
I mean, there was definitely a different pace. There was definitely a different game when Keyonte George was on the court. He didn't look to shoot first. He was always passing first. And I remember he comes in, he gets an and one, right?
Yes.
Due to a goaltend. Which I'll take.
It was going in.
I will take a goaltend. I will take a goaltend any day of the week. Anyways, I remember coming up, saying count it, and then he comes in next possession and hits a 3. I mean, that got me off my feet. I remember literally saying, I can't wait to talk about this tomorrow, because that gave me chills.
Oh, it was beautiful.
I just love seeing a guy like that, come in strong and 1, 3, put up 6 points off the board. But then you see him getting the ball and looking, honestly really controlled. He never forced anything. It felt like, he had John Collins follow behind him with dish it, always looking to pass. And so I think for a rookie that had only played 1 year in college to be that comfortable, and we saw that in the summer league.
Yeah.
He came looking absolutely comfortable. I think that is going to be a pinpoint for the next coming games, and see, what we can experiment, obviously, with the point guard position, since there's not a secured point guard starter. I want to say.
I don't think there is anymore.
But I really do. I think he looked very, very controlled and very comfortable in that game.
So back to your point, like, this is his first real NBA game. To think that he was playing high school basketball just a year and a half ago at this time. A year and a half ago, he hadn't even reported to Baylor yet, which is just crazy.
That's insane.
A year and a half ago, I feel like I can't even remember.
I was just saying, I don't know what I was doing a year and a half ago.
And I feel like it's been the exact same thing. So it's like, a year and a half ago felt like 3 months ago. He's playing high school basketball. Now he's playing an NBA game. He finished with 8 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. If you didn't watch the game, you're just listening to this and you saw the box score, Keyonte George, he didn't do anything great. Excuse me. He played super patient. I felt like he didn't force
Unbelievably
anything,
patient.
like you said. But the Jazz looked the best they did all night when he was running the show, and we saw that in the fourth quarter where he went, I think, 8 minutes straight without getting subbed out. That's a testament to Will Hardy trusting him.
And I think that's big moving forward. I mean, I think it's that trust. I think it's just giving them the floor to be able to do what they want. I think that's what we saw in the point guard position. I mean, everyone was trying different things. You saw Chris Dunn do a lot of moves when he was going through the legs. He was doing this and that. Horton Tucker was, doing his thing, trying to shoot and just kind of push the ball. Mm-hmm. And then Sexton, I mean, he gets in and goes directly to the hoop.
Oh, first possession. It's not even a fast break.
He bulldozes right to the hoop. And that just goes to show, like we said yesterday, the different skill sets that each one of these point guards have. I mean, Sexton comes in, gets that dunk. So it's not in his head getting all pumped. And I'm like, he is a fire starter. Looks like Taylor Horton Tucker is going to be that guy that just kind of is in that rotation, but kind of opens the floor a little bit. Chris Dunn's going to do his thing, and Keontae George is going to be patient and let the offense flow.
Something I would like to see from Hardy and the rest of the coaching staff is putting Chris Dunn in the starting position, Colin Sexton first guy off the bench, and then THT as that third guard, that bridge guard almost. End of the first quarter, start of the second. Your starter's not ready to go in, but your bench guy can't play more than 6 or 7 minutes at a time. I think that's where THT would thrive best. Colin Sexton, though, he needs more minutes. He, I think, played maybe 6 minutes in the second half last night. Yeah. Most of his minutes came in the first. I don't think that can happen again. And
I think that it just comes down to rotation. I mean, Colin Sexton kind of showed himself last night to be more of a defensive player. Obviously, the offensive end he's not going to go and give you 20 very much, which I feel like he used to do.
He averaged 22, I believe, his best season in Cleveland. Yeah, granted, they won like 18 games that year.
Yeah, but it's crazy just the difference in pace and difference in teams. I mean, like Chris Duarte, it's just basically the team, right? He comes to the Kings and he suddenly has a role like he did not have with the Indiana Pacers. And same with Malik Monk. I mean, he went around the league, Charlotte, the Lakers, and he was fine, but he comes to Sacramento and he has been absolutely fantastic. And I mean, he did not shoot well last night, but apart from that, I mean, he looked comfortable, he looked athletic, and I think it's just the position there. So same thing, that reminds me of John Collins. I mean, it's going to take him a second. This is a new team. This is a new, rotation and kind of responsibility that he has. And it looked like he wanted basically all responsibility. I mean, he came out shooting shots. He came out, going to the hoop. And so, like I said before, I don't think it was worrisome. Yes, it was a bad loss and there's lots of things to fix, but I do not think that I am extremely worried after that game.
It's not enough to like make you press the panic button. It's one game. Like had we blown the Kings out by 30 last night and then we lose to the Clippers the exact same way we lost to the Kings, no one cares. We already have a win on the year. John Collins, like you said, his first shot as a Jazz man, do you remember what it was?
It was when he just went straight to the hoop and...
Yeah, so he catches the ball in the corner, passes up an open three, which you're like, okay, like first game of the year, a little bit of jitters. Pump fakes nobody, pass fakes to an open Colin Sexton on the wing and drives in and takes like an 8-foot floater right in front of Sabonis. Yep. I was like, guy, you just passed up like 3 open shots just to go get a contested mid-range, which is like the worst shot you can take in basketball, especially in that offense. After that, though, I don't think he struggled much more. Most of his shots came within the offense after that, which you hope comes down to Will Hardy getting in his ear and saying, hey, don't do that again, please. Like that's a bad shot.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to see, the difference in rotations, and I'm excited to compare that with yesterday's game with tomorrow's game against the Los Angeles Clippers. I think it's going to be extremely different, and I'm excited to see the kind of rotations that we get from that.
Yeah. Last thing I want to touch on with the zone, because we've talked about that for 30 minutes straight, I think now.
Yeah.
So Will Hardy last night in his post game, he said that they gave up 24 points on 21 possessions in the zone, which I told you this morning, and you like scratched your head.
Yeah.
You're like, that
sounded crazy to me.
We played way more than that little of possessions. I think where we lost the game, because if you look at the transition, I think the Jazz outscored the Kings in transition, which, like, again, I don't believe that. I want to know what's considered transition.
Because a lot of times in transition, I saw turnovers. Like, we were forcing shots and just kind of throwing them. And then I remember telling you, I was like, it feels like we were really losing the turnover battle when we looked and we'd only had 2 more turnovers at that time. And so obviously because we're watching our team turn the ball over, it's way more noticeable than seeing the opponent turn the ball over.
Well, that, and I think I didn't check the stat, and I wish I would have before we started, is live ball turnovers versus dead ball turnovers. Dead ball turnovers, it's even like almost better than the missed shot because you're setting up your offense or defense on the other end. Live ball, I felt like we had a ton in transition, which leads to them getting easy baskets.
Absolutely. So actually today we have a new segment. It is called Paul's Play of the Game. So what this is going to be is, a certain play in the game where it defines kind of a pattern that we saw in the game. And we want to break that down to give everybody a why and kind of a bigger understanding of what was happening, little things in the games that impacted a significant moment in the game. So Paul's going to actually take us through. I'll throw the video up on the screen, and he's going to take us frame by frame of exactly what's going on and how that impacted the Utah Jazz last night.
Yeah, so this play, to no surprise, comes when the Jazz are in the zone. Malik Monk passes the ball up to Harrison Barnes, and I'm going to scrub through it right now, but it leads to a really easy basket, and if we were in man, this play absolutely doesn't happen. So let's go through it right here. You see Malik, he passes it up. Harrison Barnes catches it. Maybe could have shot a three there. Didn't. That's fine. Chris Dunn closes out and forces him baseline, which is okay. It looks like you're in a 3-2, but maybe don't force him to baseline, but whatever.
I mean, if you have no help defense, it's a lost cause.
He did sort of, but at the same time, his angle that he's coming at right now, it couldn't have done much stuff different. Anyway, what he could have done different is here. So you see him riding his hip on the right side. Right there. That's the biggest part of this play. He leaves. He starts retracting back to Malik Monk, who was the trailer. He's trying to stop a three, which is, again, you're in a 3-2. You're trying to stop a top of the key three. You can't, right there. You can't let that happen. Harrison Barnes, the second he feels Chris Dunn leave, pulls up, right hand floater off the glass. Easiest bucket in the NBA for any NBA player, really. You're 6 feet away from the bucket. Kelly Olynyk is, Conjo, 6'8", 6'9". He's not the tallest guy, maybe 6'11". He gets a late contest up on there off the glass, doesn't even touch the rim, just goes straight in. But that's the biggest part. You cannot let him just get a free basket. Like, if we just pause the frame right there, it's like, wow, what happened? Chris Dunn left. You cannot leave the guy with the ball. Why, Conjo?
Gonna give him just basically the easiest bucket in the NBA.
You can't, exactly. Like, all these guys are way too good. And we talked about it earlier. Harrison Barnes being one of the guys who can just go for 30 and a half. And that's exactly what he did. And there's only one guy on the court that can score, and it is the guy with the basketball. So do not leave him. Here's the play in full for you. If I can press play, there you go. Comes up, leaves him. Easiest shot in the world. Just like that. That's the play of the game that I feel like captures everything that went wrong for the Jazz all game long. Was just little miscues like that. You can't leave the guy with the ball. You can't hand him off at the baseline, basically. Like, all right, like, good luck, Kelly. Like, you kind of left him on an island. That's the play of the game.
Awesome. And so, Paul, if you are Will Hardy, what are you going to do? If you were to walk them through, your team, the Utah Jazz, through that exact defensive mishap, what are you telling the team that they need to do to honestly, obviously it happened a couple of times last night, but to get that in their minds that we cannot let a guy like that and a ball handler like that, get to the baseline with an open basket like that.
Well, here's two things with that. One, I felt like that happened to Chris Dunn a handful of times, and I don't have the video to support. I didn't pull up the video. Providence historically doesn't play a lot of zone, and where Chris Dunn was before, like, Chicago never played zone. Will Hardy's one of the only coaches in the NBA that plays zone, so it's a little bit different. Like, when you're telling, hey, Chris, you're this side of the floor, you're this section, you're in charge of that, and he sees Malik Monk, who's a fantastic shooter. Again, he didn't shoot great last night, but you can't leave him either. But you have to. It's a basic fundamental thing. You just can't leave the guy with the ball. And I don't care, unless you have a guy on his other hip, you can't leave him, especially when he's attacking towards the basket versus going away. Now, if, let's say, Harrison Barnes started attacking the other way, started going middle, attacking Chris Dunn's top foot, that's a different story. Sure, hand him off. He's going into 3 or 4 different guys, but where he's attacking the weak side of the floor and there's no one else over there, you have to stay on his hip. There's no other option. You just can't leave the guy with the ball. And I know I sound repetitive. You cannot leave the guy with the basketball.
But what that will do, though, and why we want to emphasize that so much, is what by being there, you're able to get more turnovers. And the Jazz actually played fantastic transition basketball. I mean, aside from a couple of turnovers we saw, I remember one where John Collins just ran literally the middle of the floor. Kelly Olynyk hit him, and we had an open dunk. Sexton ran the floor, got an open pass, and got an open dunk. And I remember even Sexton getting one where he kind of slowed, did a hop step, pump fake, and got a little bank shot layup in. But that's the thing, is our transition offense looked really, really good. Running the floor, I like to see that a little bit more, but the gaps were open. It was like a 3-man weave. Like, just get out there and get down there. And I think what is going to lead to that is doing exactly what you're talking about there, is, just being there, not letting the guy get past you. I think we get a lot of forceful passes, a lot of, getting to the baseline and having to throw it cross court, which is typically what happens and leads to turnovers. And so I think what that will do is just give us a lot more transition buckets down the court and fast breaks.
Well, something to keep an eye on as well. You mentioned it, the Miami Dolphins, the Sacramento Kings, they're the same franchise. I'm pretty sure they just pick out of the same guys to play for them. But the Kings are a really, really fast team. They're really, really, really athletic team. So for us to not absolutely get blown out in the fast break margin or in the turnover margin is a good sign. That's going to be one of the harder teams we play all year as far as transition basketball goes. And this Jazz team, I think they're going to turn out to be a really good transition team. So tomorrow night, and I know we're going to talk about it tomorrow, but I'm really excited to see how we look in transition against a Clippers team that is a little bit older, a little bit slower. They want to stay in the half court. They really don't want to get out and run.
Can't have load management this year.
Well, yeah, they
they'll find the loopholes to do it.
Bradley Beal load managed the first game. I'm sure Kawhi will find a way.
We're trying to figure out ways to slow that down, but I think, seeing Paul George and Kawhi out for the minimal times that we actually do will be exciting. I'm excited to break that down tomorrow.
Yeah, that's that. I was going to jump into more Clippers stuff. I'm really excited to break down that game tomorrow.
Again, all in all, I think the highlight of, kind of today's pod is, these are all fixable issues. All things, that to a lot of people seem worrisome and, say we looked really bad and all these things. And, all that, although that might, be a little bit true, is I didn't see anything where I felt like it wasn't fixable or we had a wrong step in our roster, in our coaching, in our team. I just think it comes down to, more reps, more experience together. And I think everything is extremely fixable.
Well, in real time, this team has been together. When was Hawaii? 3 weeks ago, 3.5 weeks ago. It's not that long.
I mean, you had a week there, that was really, really about it.
Again, when you count like hours played together, I guarantee it's not even triple digits yet. Like, they're still learning how to play together. And Will, in a second year, this is what you see in the NBA a lot, is the first year coaches are kind of just getting by, but by year 2, they're really, really trying to implement their own things, whether it's offense, defense, whatever it is. And that's what we saw last night, was Will Hardy trying to implement things. It didn't go perfect, but then again, it's not that Greg Popovich has a perfect game every time too. So I'm really excited to see how he bounces back as a coach. Because like you said, a lot of these things came down to coaching, and a lot of it just comes down to, it was the first game of the year. It was the first game of the year. It's going to happen. These players are going to make mistakes. Last thing I wanted to touch on, we said the Kings shot 45% from 3 up into the fourth quarter. I saw a tweet that was like, oh, well, they can't do that forever. Well, if they're shooting open shots, they're going to do it forever. Like, yeah, if your hands
are
like, these guys are really good shooters. To that point, though, I think we're going to contest a lot more shots. I don't think we played nearly as much zone going forward. And that play we just talked about shows you exactly why.
For all Jazz fans, nothing to worry about. We're going to bounce back, and I think it'll just get better and better. So this has been the STLK in the UTA Jazz podcast. Conjo, this is Paul. We'll see you back tomorrow afternoon.